Thank you, Cheryl. Back on the record, this is the people of the state of Colorado versus James Egan Holmes, case number 12 CR 1522. The record should reflect that Mr. Holmes is present with his attorneys, and the prosecutors are present as well. Are you ready for the jury?
Got it.
Yes. Okay, let's bring the jury in, please. Please be seated, everyone. The record should reflect that the jury is back in the courtroom. Hope you had a good break, folks. Thanks for coming back. Ms. Brady or Ms. Hicks, you may call your next witness.
Your Honor, we call Mark Bidwell.
Come around this way, please. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
You solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
All right, please be seated. Please tell us your full name and spell your first, middle, and last names.
Mark Cipriani Bidwell, M-A-R-K, C-I-P-R-I-A-N-I, Bidwell, B-I-D-W-E-L-L.
Thank you, Mr. Bidwell. I'm going to ask you to move the microphone close to your mouth so that we can all hear you, okay?
Okay.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Hicks, you may proceed with your direct examination.
Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
How are you?
I am good.
Lori Bidwell, your wife?
Yes, she is.
Okay. I'm not going to review all the information I did with her, with you, but I want to kind of start out by asking if you too know the Bob and Arlene Holmes family.
Yes, I do.
How long have you known them?
Since about 1996.
Over 20 years,
Yes,
or about 20 years?
about 20 years, correct.
Okay. Now, I understand that your family used to live in the Oak Hills neighborhood when the Holmes family lived there?
Yes,
Okay. And was that in the, 1995 to 2000 range?
correct.
Did you, well, just briefly, I know the jury's heard a lot about this neighborhood, but from your perspective, how did the families and kids and people in this neighborhood interact?
They functioned very well together. We were like-minded parents looking out for our children, allowing them to play. It was a very safe neighborhood. We gathered many times for parties that we had, just backyard parties where the kids and where everybody interacted. We knew everybody. Everybody knew each other, and it was a very good neighborhood.
During those years, you recognize James Holmes seated here, correct?
Yes, I do.
And what was the name that you called him by?
Jimmy,
Always?
always.
Okay. When you knew James Holmes in those younger years in the Oak Hills neighborhood, can you describe the kind of kid he was?
He was a very normal child. He played with his friends. He was about 5, 6 years older than our son. So he played in a different group, but when we gathered for parties and we saw him on the street, they all played very well together. Never saw any incidences of anybody not liking each other or anything on that order.
How did he interact with your son?
Our son was his sister's friend, and they were 5 years older, and he was rather protective of them.
When you would see him interact with other younger kids in the neighborhood, would you use that same word, protective of them?
Yes, I would.
Would you say he was really good with the younger kids?
Yes, he was very good with them.
Is that something that kind of stood out for you as different from some of the other older kids in the neighborhood?
No, actually, everybody looked after everybody else there.
Okay. Everyone got along really well?
Yes, they did.
With regard to James Holmes' interaction with the group of his friends there in that neighborhood, would you say he was on the inside of that group or sitting on the outside of that group?
Jimmy was on the inside. They all accepted each other, and they all hung out together and did what guys do when you're young.
How would you describe the Holmes family in general at that time?
They were, to my mind, they were a very good family. We got to know them little by little due to our son interacting with their daughter. Our parenting ideas were very similar. We always held our kids accountable to whatever they did, even though they were very young. And we became good friends over the years.
Would you say they were concerned parents?
Yes,
Good parents?
yes,
Good family?
yes.
Overall, relative to other families, were they more on the quiet side, more on the loud side?
They were more on the quiet side.
The jury has heard that your family continued to stay in touch with the Holmes family even after they moved out of the Oak Hills neighborhood. Is that right?
Correct.
Can you describe sort of the times, the kind of interactions that you had with them after they moved away?
One time we went down to visit them, and it was probably a year after they moved from the Oak Hills neighborhood to San Diego. We had a great time. As time was going on, we were watching Jimmy grow up a little bit, and he was beginning to interact with adults more rather than yes sir, no sir type thing, actually having conversations. And
Did
then-
I'm sorry.
Well, as the years went on, we got together at least once a year. Bob and Arlene and Chrissy and Jimmy would come up Christmas time or Thanksgiving time to see his relatives, and they would always make time to stop by and see us for a while.
Okay. As Mr. Holmes got older, can you sort of describe who the adult he became for the jury?
He, how do you explain that? You just could watch him develop and become more comfortable with himself and beginning having little jokes with adults, little political type conversations, and Jimmy was becoming a very enjoyable person.
And you had known him since he was very young. Was he comfortable with your family?
I would say so, yes.
Well, were most of your interactions with him sort of in the family home, in the family group?
Yes.
Not a lot of interactions with him or opportunities to observe him sort of out in the world with strangers from your perspective?
No, we did not.
Okay. Would you ever, in all the years that you've known him, would you ever describe him as the type of person who was like a poor loser?
No, I never saw that.
Okay. What about arrogant?
Definitely no.
Okay. What about self-centered?
No.
Okay. Was he ever rude or disrespectful to you?
No.
In fact, was he the opposite of that? Of all of those things?
Yes.
Okay. Over the years, well, when you heard about this case, is it fair to say you were shocked?
Yes.
I'm going to object to this point, Judge.
Sustained. Rephrase your question, please.
Is there anything about when you heard about this case, is that at any way consistent with the character of the person that you know as Jimmy Holmes?
No, it was not. It took us completely by surprise, and we didn't even, actually took a little while to put the name together with actually knowing who it was.
Okay. Over the years, have you come to care for the Holmes family?
Yes, very much.
Judge, I'm again going to object.
Overruled.
You can answer.
Yes, very much.
Okay. Would you say that you have come to love the Holmes family?
Yes.
Again, I'm going to object.
Overruled.
And does that include James Holmes?
Yes.
Okay. Are these people, the entire family, a family that's important to you?
Yes.
Overruled.
Yes, they are.
And does that include James Holmes?
Yes, it does.
Do you support this whole family?
Yes, I do.
And do you support James Holmes?
Yes, I do.
Your Honor, I don't have any other questions. Thank you, Mr. Bidwell.
Mr. Essen, do you have any cross-examination?
No, Judge, thank you.
And the jury does not appear to have any questions. May this witness be released from his subpoena?
Yes, sir.
Any objection?
No, thank you.
All right, sir, thank you. Call your next witness, please.
Your Honor, we call Ann Hestan.
Good morning. Come around this way, please. If I could have you raise your right hand so that I can administer an oath. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please be seated. Please tell us your full name and spell your first, middle, and last names.
My full name is Ann Elizabeth Heston. My first name is spelled A-N-N. My middle name is spelled E-L-I-Z-A-B-E-T-H. And my last name is spelled H-E-S-T-A-N-D.
Ms. Hicks, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Heston.
Morning.
Where do you live?
I live in Watsonville, California, Monterey Bay Area.
Okay. Is that near Salinas or Castroville?
It's about 15 miles from Castroville. north.
How long have you lived in that area?
I moved to Santa Cruz County in 1974, and I moved to Watsonville in 1977.
Okay. What do you do for a living currently?
I'm a retired teacher, but I still volunteer in classrooms, and I still take temporary assignments, and I volunteer for hospice.
When you were a teacher, how long were you a teacher for?
I taught from 1974 to 2008, 34 years.
Did you ever teach at Castroville Elementary?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall having a student in your class by the name of James Holmes?
I recalled Jimmy, is what I called him.
Okay. And what grade did you have him in?
I had Jimmy in second grade. It was a 2-3 combo classroom.
What is that?
That's when 2 grades are combined together. So we had some second grade students and some third grade students. And at the time, the style of teaching was less prescribed than it is now, so the children kind of moved through the curriculum that was appropriate for them.
Was it a fairly small elementary school?
Yes, I would say so.
Okay.
I think we had, maybe three of each grade. It was very small. It's a very small community, and it served a very small area. The children lived right in town, or it's an agricultural community.
Mhm.
So they lived in town or out in the rural areas, and then there was one subdivision where people lived that worked in Monterey and Salinas.
And kids would also come from that side?
Yes, and Jimmy lived in that neighborhood.
Okay. Can we get, it's already been previously introduced as D-TR-220, I think it's 959. What is this?
It's the class picture.
Okay, are you in this photo?
I'm in the top row next to Mrs. Garcia. She was the principal.
Okay. And is this the second, third grade class that you're referring
Yes,
to?
it is.
And where is the student that you knew by Jimmy Holmes?
He's right down at the bottom right.
Can we call that out? Is this how you remember him?
Absolutely.
Okay.
When I received the letter from the public defender's office reminding me that I had been Jimmy's student,
Teacher.
I had no awareness of the incident because I had been in the back country during that.
Relevance.
Whoops.
Sustained, and actually, there's not a question posed, so ask your question, please.
When you first heard from us, were you able to immediately recall this child, Jimmy Holmes, that you remembered in your class?
Instantly.
Yeah.
I went right to what I instantly remembered.
Okay. It was pretty long ago, but he stood out for you, is that fair to say? Yes?
Totally. I mean, he stood out. I remembered his wonderful smile.
If I can approach with some exhibits, D-TR-287, 286, and 285.
Yes.
look at the first one, D-TR-285. Do you recognize that?
Yes, it's the report card that I wrote for Jimmy throughout the year.
And that's something that you're required to do as a teacher,
Yes.
part of the records that you keep at school.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Sorry, she has to write it down, so we have to.
Oh, yes, it's part of the record.
Okay. Your Honor, we would move for introduction of D-TR-285.
Ms. Pearson?
No objection.
All right, without objection, D-TR-285 is admitted and may be published.
2605. So can you, some of this is hard to read. It might be easier for you on the copy that you have, I don't know. But can you just tell the jury what, did you have James Holmes in your class for a full entire year?
Yes, I did.
So describe how this report card is set out.
Well, it has the several subject areas because we grade students on their academic ability, and then we also grade them on their citizenship and work habits.
Okay.
That's down at the bottom of the left-hand side. And then the first quarter, we don't give grades because we meet with the parents, and so that is a verbal report on the student's progress. And then the second and third quarters and the fourth quarter, we comment. And at the bottom of the report card is the grading code.
So what were your comments about James Holmes in the second quarter?
In the second quarter, it says, Jimmy continues to show steady improvement. I am especially pleased with his writing skills. His something and reports are flowing much more naturally.
And with these students, are you teaching them all day long, every day throughout the
Yes.
school year? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then what does it say there at the bottom?
Thank you for monitoring his homework and projects.
Does that indicate to you the parents' involvement when you're thinking?
Yes.
That? Okay. So in that bottom comment, thank you for monitoring his homework and projects, that's referring to Mr. and Mrs. Holmes' involvement with you?
Right, and supporting Jimmy in his education.
Okay. And what were his comments in the second quarter?
Jimmy has been such a hard worker this quarter. I am very pleased with his progress and his work habits.
Is that how you remember him as a student?
Yes, I remember him as being a very hardworking, very resourceful, and conscientious. That's how I remember him academically
Okay.
as a student.
Now, I'm sure that over the years, you have had some disruptive students in your classes.
Yes, I have.
Was James Holmes ever one
No.
of those kids?
Never.
Can you describe for the jury socially how he interacted with the students in his class?
James was very friendly, very considerate, very playful. He was exuberant. The other children always liked to play with Jimmy when it was recess time. They wanted to run around the playground with him. He was helpful. Because it was a 2-3 combo, we had various levels of ability in the classroom, and he was very helpful with the other students and would applaud their success, and the other children would applaud Jimmy's successes in the classroom too. He was very well liked.
Okay.
And the whole classroom was a really wonderful group of children.
That was what I was going to ask about next. Was this sort of a special class in that regard?
I would say so. Combination classes are often very difficult because of the wide range of abilities, and it's not just academic abilities, it's levels of social and emotional development. So you have a very wide range, and this class was very cohesive and very cooperative, and also very spirited and fun-loving. We had a lot of fun, but I always knew that they would be respectful of me and respectful of one another.
ever worry about leaving them with a substitute teacher when you had to?
No, and that was a very significant year for me because I was out for an entire week due to the death of my mother, and I was so relieved that I had such a wonderful class and I could just call a friend and have her take over and not have to worry about anybody in the classroom who would be disruptive or aggressive.
Can you take a look at D-TR-286 there before you? And is that, what is that?
Well, it's a little picture. At the beginning of the school year, we had a project where we read Rumpelstiltskin, where the young mother's trying to guess Rumpelstiltskin's name. And then it was a get acquainted with the other students project. And then the children drew a picture of themselves and wrote their name on the paper.
Okay.
And so that was from that project.
And do you remember, do you recall that that's the picture that the student you knew as Jimmy drew?
This is the picture that Jimmy drew.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Your Honor, we would move for introduction of that photo, D-TR-286.
No objection.
Without objection from the people, it is admitted.
And if we can just publish that, that's 2571. And when you, this is not a photo that you kept in your records.
No, it would be something that would have gone home
Okay.
with the students. But we would have had it in a book and we would have read it again and again so the children learned each other's names.
And when you saw this, you immediately recognized that this was from that Rumpelstiltskin story.
Yeah, I knew what it was from.
Now, if you can also take a look at D-TR-287. Oh, it's not introduced.
Ms. Pearson, are you objecting to D-TR-287?
I am, Your Honor. There are several things in it that I object to.
Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Higgs.
Do you recognize that sort of packet of items?
Yes, I do.
Are those items that were part of, did you have a project, a thing that you did with your class with regard to sending them postcards?
Yes, it was part of a geography project, and so the students studied different national parks in the state of California, and then I collected postcards from those parks, and then the students had to pretend that they went to the park and write a postcard home to their parents about the park, which they visited.
Mm-hmm.
And then we walked to the post office and mailed the postcards. It was a whole geography unit.
Was it also part of that geography unit that you would send postcards?
Yes, when I traveled, I sent the students postcards so that they could be aware of a larger world.
Okay. And was there also an occasion that you sent postcards off? What is reflected in D-. We would move for admission of D-TR-287.
Your Honor, I object to several things in there. May we approach?
Yes. The objection is sustained on foundational grounds, but Ms. Hicks, I'll let you attempt to establish more foundation. Thank you.
Ms. Heston, if you look at pages 4 and 6 of that document,
Does that include the cover?
yes. It's the two postcards that are
Mhm.
signed by a person named Jimmy.
Right.
When you look at the handwriting on those postcards, does that seem to be the same handwriting to you?
Just smaller, same handwriting.
One seems a little neater.
One's smaller and probably more focused because he was trying to fit it in a smaller space.
Okay,
And it could have been at different times of the year.
okay. And as part of what you're studying, teaching in second grade is partly handwriting?
Yes.
Okay. And those are both postcards from the student that you knew by the name as Jimmy?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Thank you. With regard to the last page, that contains a news article.
Yes,
Is that where you got the idea to have the kids send postcards into space?
it is.
Okay. Your Honor, we would again move for admission of D-TR-287.
Any other objection based on that additional record, Ms. Pearson?
No, Your Honor.
All right, without objection, then D-TR-287 is admitted and may be published.
And we're just going to go through this fairly quickly if we can pull that up. Now, this is not a packet that you kept. This would have gone home to
Correct.
his parents.
Correct.
Okay.
It was a packet that probably went home at back-to-school night or open house.
Is that toward the end of the year?
Mhm. So it was a collection of projects from throughout the year.
Okay. When you saw this, did you immediately recognize this project you did with that class?
Yes, I mean, it brought back to mind all the things that we did.
Okay. And if we can go to page 2. So this would have been one of the postcards that you had the kids pretend to write?
Right,
Okay.
that's correct.
And if we can go to the next page. And then, what is this?
This is the research that he was doing on Mount Shasta, preparatory to writing the postcard.
Okay. And if we can go to the next page. And then this would be the postcard that you,
That he wrote pretending that he had been at Mount Shasta
okay. The first one was to you and this one is to his parents?
to his parents, and this is the one that we took to the post office and mailed,
Okay. And you can see the stamp on there?
20 cents.
And you mailed it home to his parents?
Yes.
Okay. And if we can get the next page? Another part of the project?
Yes.
And if we can get the last page? Now, this is another postcard?
And that was the back of the fairy tale one.
Okay, all right. Also part of the same project.
Right.
And then the last page. And we're not to the last page. And is this, what is this?
Well, when I traveled, I sent postcards to the children, and the children were grouped in the classroom. And Jimmy and Katrina and Sarah were in Jared's group, so I would send a postcard to each group, table group in the classroom.
Okay.
And that's the postcard that I sent to them.
All right. And the next page? That is the last page. So this is the article you read where you got the idea?
Right, and then we sent our postcard to outer space.
The kid's pretty excited about that?
Very.
Okay.
It was a class that loved learning.
Including Jimmy?
Yes, absolutely.
Did you ever have any problem with James Holmes, your student Jimmy, in your class?
I never ever had a problem with Jimmy in my classroom.
Was he always respectful?
He was kind, he was respectful, he would He loved to take things to the office. He was always offering to do that. He would help other children. I never had any problems with Jimmy.
Okay.
As I said, when I received the letter, I instantly pictured this wonderful child.
How do you feel about the students in your classes?
Well, when I have the students in a student, but they moved after a couple of years.
Despite that, do you still feel, do you still care for him?
Yes, I do.
Objection, Your Honor.
Rule?
Do you still support him?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, Ms. Heston. I don't have any other questions for you.
Thank you.
Ms. Pearson, do you have any questions?
Just a couple. So, ma'am, the defendant was in your second grade class, and he did the kind of projects that kids do in second grade. Would that be
Yeah.
correct?
That's correct.
And when's the last time that you saw him?
I saw him in 1996.
So almost 20 years ago.
It is almost 20 years ago.
And you have no knowledge of what kind of a person he turned out to be, do you?
I know from newspaper,
Personally, you didn't
no,
see him
no,
in middle
no,
school, high school,
no, I did not.
college?
No,
Didn't see him after college?
No.
You don't know what kind of an adult he turned out to be?
no.
Do you have any redirect, Ms. Hicks?
Does any of that change the fact that you care for and support him?
It doesn't change anything at all. I have a very vivid memory of Jimmy. And I cared for Jimmy in 1996, and I still care for Jimmy.
Do you have any recross?
No, Your Honor.
And the jury does not appear to have any questions. May this witness be released from her subpoena?
She may.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, ma'am. You may step down. Call your next witness, please. Yes. Members of the jury, as a result of some scheduling conflicts, there are witnesses who could not testify here live, and so they came in and their testimony was video recorded in advance. And the defense is going to show one of those recordings at this time. I want to instruct you that you should not consider that testimony any differently than you would live testimony just based on the fact that it is video recorded. You should consider it the same as you would if the witness were testifying live here in court. Does that make sense to everyone? Everyone's saying yes and not in their head yes. Okay, with that instruction then, Ms. Brady, do you want to proceed?
Yes, please, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you.
And Your Honor, just so the record is complete, we are going to tender to the court D-TR-288, which is a copy of the testimony that is going to be played now. And there were 3 exhibits with this witness, which we can't publish because the video will be playing, and so I do have copies for the jurors.
Okay, do you want to distribute those now?
Yes.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, give them to my staff, please, and my staff will distribute those. Thank you. And my court reporter is not going to be taking down what is in the recording because there's a record already of the testimony.
That's fine.
Okay. All right, and for the record, my staff is distributing the exhibits that were admitted. What exhibits are they? Ms. Higgs, do you know?
Yes, they're D-TR-98, 99, 100.
Okay, thank you. And folks, we're gonna publish these exhibits the same way we published other exhibits in the past. That is to say, we're gonna give each of you a copy so you don't have to pass the original from one person to the other. And then we will retrieve your copies when the recording has finished playing. All right, there aren't enough copies, so why don't we publish it later, Ms. Higgs? Okay, let's start playing D-TR-288. We'll publish those exhibits later, folks.
Okay, Your Honor, the defense calls Paul Carrer to the stand.
All right. Come around this way, please. If I could have you raise your right hand so that I can administer an oath. You solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Please be seated. Could you please turn the microphone around so that it faces you to make sure we can all hear you? And then would you please tell us your full name for the record and please spell your first, middle, and last names.
Okay. Paul Henry Carter, Karrer. I'm nervous.
And the first name is Paul, P-A-U-L.
Yes.
And your middle name is Henry, H-E-N-R-Y.
Correct.
All right, you may proceed with your direct examination, Ms. Higgs.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Carr, it's okay to be nervous. It's an odd situation. Can you tell us where it is that you live in general?
I live in Monterey County. It's on the coast of California. It's about 17 miles from Castroville Elementary School.
And where is that? Northern, Central, Southern California?
It's exactly middle of California.
Okay. How long have you lived there in that area?
28, 30 years.
Okay, quite some time.
Yes.
What do you do for a living there?
I'm an elementary school teacher. Currently I teach 5th grade.
How long have you been a teacher?
Oh my goodness, since 78, 34 years, give or take.
You said right now you're teaching 5th grade. Have you always taught 5th grade?
No, I've taught college in Korea. I taught English in Samoa. I did student teaching in England, 26 years at Castroville Elementary School. 3rd grade for a while, 4th grade for a while, but 5th grade forever.
Okay. How long is forever? Does that go back?
Probably 20 years.
Okay. So sometime in the mid-90s, is that reasonable?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have a student by the name of James Holmes in your 5th grade class?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall what year that would have been?
1998, 1999.
Okay. I want to speak with you a little bit about your experience with James. Did you call him James when he was...
It's difficult for me to call him James, or even Mr. Holmes seems very strange. He's Jimmy.
Okay.
And he's Jimmy to me.
I want to ask you, I know you're a little bit nervous,
I am.
to let me completely finish my question so we're not talking over each other. As you know, it's being recorded, and I want to make sure the jury hears everything that you have to say, all right?
Yes.
Okay. So before we talk more about Jimmy. I'd like to talk to you about what does fifth grade look like, teaching a class in fifth grade?
Okay, fifth grade usually is comprised of about 30 kids, give or take, usually 15, if you're lucky, 15 boys, 15 girls. Fifth grade is a very nice time, which is why I've done it for so long. Fifth grade teachers in California teach all subjects, so math, reading, English, science, social studies, art, all of those things. It's a very nice time because the kids, to be honest, don't really know about sex or drugs yet. They're at their peak. I have a daughter, and they become unpleasant later, and that's not true in fifth grade.
Okay, so sort of before the teenage.
They're admiring, and the little chocolate bars on your desk. They're sweet, kind.
Are they with you all day?
They are with me all day. Except for lunch and breaks.
Right. So, but every subject.
Every subject all day.
Was that the case in 1998 and 1999 when you had Jimmy in your class?
Yes.
And tell me when did the school year start and finish?
You mean month-wise?
Correct.
Okay. School begins early in August and ends early in June. So around August, for example, this year, August 7th or so, we have to go back to school, and we finish June 5th or 6th, depending on where weekends are.
Okay. So
It's been that way forever.
I'm counting.
We have 185, 187 school days per year in California.
So that would be a full 6 months of time throughout a period of about, what, 10 months that you would actually be in daily contact with Jimmy?
Full 6 months?
Well, you said 187 days.
I'm going to object to it being referred to as Jimmy. The court's been very clear that people will be referred to by their last names or as the defendant.
Sustained. I'll let the witness, if he wants to refer to him as such, he can. The counsel should refer to him as Mr. Holmes. Go ahead.
Your Honor, if I may approach.
Yes.
That's awkward since it's...
The objection remains sustained. All right, you may proceed.
Let me recollect where we were. Oh, Mr. Carr, what's the age range of fifth graders?
Usually 10 or 11, once in a while 12 if a child's been retained.
What do you mean retained?
They stay back a year for performance previously.
Can you tell me a little bit about Castroville Elementary School, how big it was, what grades it contained?
Sure. Castroville Elementary School, at that time?
Yes.
Okay, at that time, we were K through 5th grade, K being kindergarten, and there was about 500 kids, give or take.
Okay. And the Castroville community, was it a large community?
Well, it's very small. At that time, it was about 5,000 people.
And were there a couple other neighborhoods around the Castroville town that people would live in and still come to your school?
Yeah, there were two main communities, and one is the community immediately that the school is in. That's kind of Castroville Center. Tends to be low socioeconomic Latino kids there. They're mostly in agriculture, farming. And then Oak Hills is nearby. So there are two different feeder regions for the school.
Okay. Is this generally a rural and agricultural?
Oh, yes, it's pretty rural.
Mr. Kerr,
Yes,
I'm going to echo what Ms. Hayes said earlier, and that is you need to wait until she finishes her questions. That's okay. You're doing it to me too. That's all right. We do it in everyday life, but here it's important to wait. Even if you can anticipate what the question is or what the end of the question is, you have to wait because otherwise my court reporter can't take down everything that's being said. Okay?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. All right. Ms. Hayes, you may continue.
Thank you. Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
And I'm approaching with D-TR-99. And Mr. Carr, if you could just take a look at that for a moment.
Do you recognize that?
I do. There's a mistake.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. Is that the yearbook sort of class photo of the 5th grade class that you had James Holmes in?
Yes.
And is that a fair and accurate copy of that photo, or have there been any changes?
No changes, but
Have some of the names of the other students been marked out?
all of them.
Yes. Okay. Other than that, for those names being marked out for privacy reasons, does that accurately reflect that class that you had with Mr. Holmes?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, we would move for admission of D-TR-99.
Is there any objection?
I believe it says third grade on it, not fifth.
And we'll get to that.
Well, I would object to it because it's not a fifth grade picture, as he's just illustrated. It says it's third grade.
All right, Ms. Hicks, do you want to make a record about that, or do you want to
Certainly.
ask him about that?
Mr. Carr, you said there's an error on that.
Yeah, it should say grade 5.
Is that
It says grade 3. It's a common mistake.
a typographical error?
Yes.
Same error that was actually in the yearbook that year?
Yes.
Indeed, though, that was a 5th grade class, is that right?
Yes.
Your Honor, we would move for admission of D-TR-99.
With that additional record, is there any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Without objection, it is admitted.
And Mr. Carr, do you see the student that, do you see Mr. Holmes in that?
I do.
Okay. Do you see him seated here at council table with us today as well?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Carr, with that particular class from 1998 to 1995 that's represented in that photo, was there something about that particular class that stood out for you in your memory?
Yes. They're a small group of kids is called a cohort, and there was the cohort in this group of kids that were far above average was just phenomenal. It's about 5 or 6 kids that were just kind of off the scale for ability and performance. And Jimmy was one of them, and he, to be honest, was the leader of the pack, which is why I remember them. It's unusual to have 5 or 6 kids from that area just shine academically.
Was this a class that a lot of teachers remembered going through Castroville Elementary?
Yes, and we would fight to get them.
When you say a cohort of 5 or 6 students, do some of those students still live in the Castroville area?
Yes,
Have you kept in touch with some of them?
yes,
Have you had occasion over the years to talk to them about that class and about James Holmes?
yes.
I just want to be clear for the jury, some of those discussions with them, has that kind of refreshed your memory about things that happened way back in 1998?
Yes, I didn't remember, and they brought it back, and I went, whoa, correct.
After talking with them, do you have an independent recollection of some of those things?
Yes.
It's okay. Some of those things that we're going to talk about here in a minute.
Yes.
All right. And also to be clear for the jury, the last time that you saw James Holmes, that was in 5th grade, correct?
Yes.
You have not kept in touch with him, nor he with you since then. So let's talk about this smart group of kids. Describe how they interacted with each other.
There were 5 or 6 of them, and they had a wonderful ability to pull not only themselves up, they were very competitive with each other, but it pulled up even the lower kids. Usually there's a bell curve in class. You have super high performers, medium performers, low performers. And this high group that Jimmy was a member of, they just pulled everybody up together. And it was a pleasant rivalry. The kids were not mean-spirited. It was a really nice thing to see, very unusual, which is why I remember it.
Did it pull the class up behavior-wise?
Yes. Yeah, it was a nice class in every way for academics and behavior.
Okay. I want to now sort of have you describe a little bit about James Holmes specifically within that group. What do you recall about him and his demeanor?
I recall he was very pleasant. He smiled. He was a smiler. Well kept, kept, dressed neatly, caused me no grief. The kids liked him a lot. And there was no dark side. And I trusted him a lot.
Okay.
In fact, and he and another kid, Chris, can I say names?
Yeah.
He and another child, Chris Chun, were really running things, and they had this rivalry going. But they finished their work all the time. So what does a teacher do with, you have to do this balance all the time of high ability kids, low ability kids. And me and Jimmy and Chris and a couple other kids would finish their work. And it wouldn't be wrong. What do you do? So they said, can we start a computer, can we do a website? And I said, basically, okay, what's that? Because this is a long time ago. And so they wrote code. They did a website. Jimmy and Chris did a website. And they did the coding, and I didn't know what the heck they were doing, but I trusted them to do that. They sat in the corner where I would have my back to them, so that means I trusted them. And they did it, and then they say, so don't tell me how you did this because I don't get it. How does it work? And, it's like that. And things like that. And there's no way I would ever trust kids to do that unless they have the ability, and I know they're going to accomplish the task. And this is just so good in so many ways. It also sets a precedence for the other kids in class because they think, hey, if I do my work and I do something to completion, maybe I can do something like that too. It just pulls everybody up.
Sounds like
And it
almost...
was way out of my ability.
Okay. It sounds like Mr. Holmes, James Holmes, did a little teaching himself.
To me, for that, yeah.
Do you remember anything about that website that you had back then that they made?
Yeah, I do. Boy, they showed me, and they were doing line coding, which was like Chinese to me.
So let me stop you there for a second. You're talking about line coding?
Yes, to create the website in those days, you had to write code, HTML, I believe it was, and it's laborious. It's not like now you go click, click, move, click. No, they sentences and code. It's another language, and it's not one that I knew. So they did that. But the thing that I remember the most about it was they put on a world that rotated. And the purpose of this in the end was so the parents and the kids could see what homework was. What are we going to do for field trips? Please read X amount of books. It's an update, so the parents could check.
Were you impressed with his work?
Well, very much so.
I want to, if I can approach the witness with two other documents, D-TR-100 and D-TR-98. I've already shown them to the prosecution.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Carr, if you can look at those for a moment and then look up at me when you're done. Oh, excellent. Thank you. One last question. Did Mr. Holmes appear to thrive in your school?
Yes, he did. He did really well. He did really well. He got awards regularly. And
Yeah, we're going to talk about those two documents. I know you're looking at them. Are those, the first document, I believe, is sort of a grade report for that year, is that right?
yes.
Is that a report that you are required to keep in the course of your duties as a teacher at the school?
Yes.
And is that a report that you filled out, sort of the meat and potatoes of that grade report?
Yes, my report card for him.
Okay. And it covers what time period?
We had 4 semesters then, and this is the first 3 semesters of that year.
Does it appear to accurately reflect your handwriting and what you wrote on his grade report?
Yes, especially the part I can't read that's smudged. That's me. Yes.
And is that something that your school actually keeps in the regular course of its business in education?
Yes, we're required to.
Your Honor, I would move now for the admission of, I think that's D-TR-100. Can you look at the number on the back?
DTR-100.
Yes.
Any objection?
No objection.
Without objection, D-TR-100 is admitted.
Thank you. Can you just sort of read for us and talk to us about what is written on that report card for your students?
Okay. It's an assessment of academics, and he has all A's and 2 B's for 3 semesters, and then I comment on each semester. And you want me to read the comment?
Yes, please.
Okay. So for first semester, it says, "Wow, what a neat kid. Handwriting is serious and frightening. He has 8 A's and 2 B's, and he's on Teacher's Honor Roll. Teacher's Honor Roll is special at that time. There was regular honor roll, and then this is like the Yale School of Awards. He was on Teacher's Honor Roll. And then also I taught the kids chess, and so I wheedled in my own little chess grade on here. That's an addition on all the report cards. And it says the chess grade was just for fun, but he got A-, A-.
Was that not really a real grade?
It's fake, but it was for fun because we used to, the kids would come in at lunchtime and play chess with me.
Yeah.
And then I wrote second semester 8 A's, 2 B's. Jimmy can get sloppy with his writing. Mine's messier. Teacher's honor roll again. And then third semester, same thing. Teacher's honor roll. So, I mean, he was there always.
Okay.
And not a word about negative behavior because it wasn't an issue.
I'd like you to look at the second document, D-TR-98. Now that paper actually represents 2 documents, is that right?
Yes.
And are those the types of sort of cards or notes that you would send back home to your students' parents?
Yes.
Okay, what was the purpose of doing that?
I used to try to do PR with parents, positive PR. And so it's good to send a positive note home to parents about kids, because then when you have grief later on, you've kind of gone over the rough part and you have something in your pocket to go for. So this is a positive note to Jimmy's parents. Can I read it? It's short.
Not yet. Do you recognize your signature on both of those?
Yeah.
Recognize your handwriting?
Yes, absolutely.
Is that also something that you did commonly in the course of
I
your...
still do this.
Do you recognize the stamp on there?
I do.
You still have that
I
stamp?
do.
Your Honor, we're going to move for admission of D-TR-98.
Any objection?
No objection.
Without objection, it is admitted.
All right. If you could read those one at a time.
Sure. All right, so the one is for parents. It says, "Dear Holmes, thanks for letting Jimmy set up my computer with net zero over vacation." So that means we must have had a break. I'm going to guess, but I'll let on my Christmas vacation, he continued to work on it. So this is a thank you for doing that.
When you say he continued to work on it, what are you talking about?
The computer website.
Is that what you're referring to when it says net zero?
Yeah, net zero is a provider,
Okay.
and probably was free back then, so that's what we use, net zero then.
Okay. And the second note?
Okay, second one is whenever the kids did a project, I would always give them an assessment, and it's always good to give feedback to the kids and the parents. So I can't remember what the project was, but he did a project, so it says, "Great project, thorough questions, and interesting." Paul Carr, and I put an A on it, and a stamp, and I had my little swirl, because sometimes the kids would forge these. So it's forgery proof, this one.
Is that something Jimmy ever did, or Mr. Holmes ever tried to do?
He didn't need to.
Right. You also talked about I want to back up a little bit to that computer project that you talked about. And I just want to ask you some questions about James's work on that, or Mr. Holmes' work on that project, okay? You said allowing him to do that meant you knew you trusted him. Is that right?
Yes.
Was he able to work pretty independently in your class?
Oh, totally. That's why he had to do that.
Was he You said he got all A's and just a couple B's. Was that reflective of his work all the
Oh,
time?
yeah, absolutely.
Good student?
Yes. And in fact, as they look at this first semester, he increases in the amount of A's that he gets each semester because he's improving.
Do you have any memory of him ever being disruptive in your class?
No, I mean, he was a 5th grade kid, and he may have done small stuff. I don't remember. But if there was anything big, I would have remembered.
Okay.
Such is not the case.
Now, do you have any recollection of meeting his parents at all?
No, and that's usually a good thing.
Explain that.
We have parent conferences twice a year, and usually the parents that we need to see, those kids don't come. And the parents that their children do really well, we don't need to see them. Did I misspeak? Did I say that correctly? Or did I flip it? Look, can I say that again?
Absolutely.
All right. Children whose parents I need to see don't show up. And kids who do really well, their parents show up, and there's not much to say to them. I can't. They look familiar to me, actually. So.
You see them here in the book?
Yes, I do. But usually, if there's no problem, then it's not locked into my brain.
So the fact that you don't have a recollection of them would mean you probably didn't have any issues at all to explain to them?
Correct.
Okay. You do a running race with your students in your
When I
class.
was younger back then, yes.
Explain what that race is and why you do it.
Okay. At PE time or recess, I would race the kids. And so this is many years ago. And when the kids were good, I would give them tickets. And tickets are, if a kid gets X amount of tickets, I would buy them pizza, or if they're gabbing and they're in trouble, I would say, hey, I want 5 tickets. It could be a punitive thing. But if they beat me in a race, which no one had ever done, they get 25 tickets. So we all line up and we run a quarter of a mile to the fence and run back. You know, everybody wants to beat the teacher, right? And I'll tell you the truth, I gave it everything I had. And he beat me.
So you're the first kid to do that?
He beat me. Yes, he was. Because the kids in the class wouldn't let me forget.
Do you recall how he reacted to that?
I don't, but I'm sure he was pleased with himself.
Was he a good sport about it?
Probably.
Can you tell us what impressed you the most about James Holmes when he was in your class?
That he was high ability. And quite often when kids are super high, there's not a balance there. Sometimes they need a lot of attention. And he was balanced. He had it all. He was like a Renaissance child. No, he was. And because he had academic ability, the kids liked him.
Is he a popular kid?
Yes. You know, they played together. The kids were told they played soccer at his house. They messed around, you know, but he was just even and positive and smiled, attentive.
Was he ever rude or impolite with you?
No, I don't think so.
What about with the other kids? Ever mean or wrong to the other kids?
I don't think so.
That's something that would stand out to you.
Yeah. And plus, you know, kids have a reputation that comes to us from the previous class, and if there was trouble, I would have heard it, and it wasn't.
So you were aware that James Holmes had been in Castroville Elementary for several years before he got to the class.
And it was a very desirable class, and the teachers say, oh, you're going to get Jimmy and Chris and Michael, and that's a good thing. But yes.
How does, generally is that school a fairly small school? Would you describe it that way?
We are now, currently we're kindergarten through 6th grade, so we have a whole other group of kids. We're about 650. We're packed.
But back then it was smaller?
Yes, oh yeah.
The school as a whole, did you kind of really treat these kids as your own?
Oh, I always do. Yeah,
And you do especially?
Yeah, I still do. I help many of them still. I have some that go to prison, and I visit them. during the summer when school is out, I invite them to come to Monterey. We have a pizza party. Not all show up, but it's how I maintain contacts with my kids.
Especially the ones that stay in the area?
Well, yeah.
Okay. Can you tell the jury why it is that you chose to come testify here today on behalf of Mr. Holmes?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Motion to ask to approach.
Yes, please. Okay, the objection is sustained in part and overruled in part. Ms. Hicks, you may proceed as we discussed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Carr, did the kid that you knew by Jimmy, James Holmes, when he was in your 5th grade class, did he have an impact on you?
I use it then.
Yes.
He's a really bright kid. He's the kind of kid in his group, or the kind of kid that makes teaching very rewarding. And he makes keep on doing what he's doing, and he was an example for the kids. And, he's shown a little light on, for example, the computer's an example. He was teaching me something.
Is this a kid that you cared about?
Yeah, yes.
Would you say that you continue to care about him in some sense?
That's why I'm here.
You support him?
Very much so.
I don't have any further questions, thank you.
I can read what this says. I figured out what I wrote on the report card. No, we're done.
No, that's fine.
Okay. It says, what a neat kid. Handwriting, he's serious, he's highly productive, and then also says, Jimmy can get sloppy with his writing. He sacrifices length times for quality.
You tried to put some sort of criticism in it,
Yeah.
and that was all you could come up with regarding him. Because I have to approach with this, if I may.
You may.
D-101. Mr. So look at that video just previously?
Yes, I did.
And are your initials on that? Is that a video, James, when you received an award at your school?
Yes.
And did you recognize yourself in that video?
Yes.
Your Honor, we have moved for 101.
Any objection, Ms. Pierce?
Could I ask what?
Yes.
Do you
At the award assembly, so we had an award assembly each term, so it would have been 98 to 99.
and you know that that's during the year you were teaching him?
I'm in it with him.
Okay. No.
An objection, it is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. So tell us a little bit about these award ceremonies that you've been in.
I think a positive reinforcement for the kids. It's really good for the parents. It's very uplifting. Encourages them. So this particular one was, I believe, was at the end of an award ceremony. He could have received many other awards during this, and probably did. But this one that I looked at was for attendance.
Okay.
So that means he had 100% attendance.
Video?
And my voice, I recognize as well.
Okay. On a table.
Yes.
The jury's.
The record should reflect the jury has exited the courtroom now. Everyone may be seated, please. Do you see the objection on the letters, Ms. This afternoon?
We are.
All right.
Asserted they're being offered to show the jury that his mother and father, July 20th, as he is incarcerated, and there was discussion between Mr. Holmes and Dr. Reed about contact with his family and whether his family continued to support our indicative of their continued support of their son. We offer it in mitigation. So we would ask the court to allow us to introduce that. Would again cite the court to Paxton, Ward, and the 5th, 6th, 8th amendments to the Constitution and Colorado Constitution, and would argue to the court that all this goes to his that he comes from.
Your Honor, if I could respond. Could I respond more specifically to what some of these letters contain?
Yeah.
Your Honor, there are 4 letters that the father writes to the defendant, and he writes about current football games, current soccer games, getting his own haircut, about tax season, about what they were doing at holidays when it was in jail. He writes about the weather, about people getting flu at work, about getting his wife's car worked on. He also writes about knowing that the defendant is going to go to Pueblo and what he ought to expect and how he ought to prepare for that. With Mom's letters, she writes a lot about what she's doing, books she's reading, her book club, exercising, what's going on with the neighbors, the weather, what she's doing at work, going golfing with friends. And then she writes a lot about how she's educating herself about mental illness, that she thinks there are biological changes that occur that she's trying to understand, that she believes that early diagnosis and treatment is essential for mental illness, that she knows that the defendant didn't choose this, that she's going to the annual conference for NAMI, the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, that she's sorry that they didn't know he was ill. She talks about how she prays for the victims, that she's sorry for this, and that she forgives the defendant. She recounts memories of their life together. So there are a number of things that are written in these letters that are completely irrelevant. I mean, the activities that they have outside without the defendant have nothing to do with anything and are very much self-serving hearsay. But there's also a lot of statements in here that are inadmissible evidence. It's not appropriate for them to talk about mental illness or mental health or the attempts to educate themselves about this. And this is just sort of a backdoor way trying to get in something that's otherwise inadmissible. So we would object to these letters in their entirety. By my count, there are 44 from the mother and 4 from the father.
You have a copy of the letters that I can quickly review during the lunch break?
I have the exhibit. If I can get it back to Mr. Brockler, I can report.
Yes. Mr. Brockler, do you mind if I review those during the lunch break?
I don't, Your Honor, and before the court takes that break, this is something I was just handed. There's other objections we have to things they intend, it appears, to introduce through the father also, but one step at a time. I have no objection to the court taking those letters to review over lunch.
Okay. All right. Why don't you, can somebody hand me those letters, please?
Your Honor, with regard to the letters between Arlene Holmes and her son, we gave these to the people a long time ago, and I didn't anticipate dealing with it today, so I don't have them all in a stack. I have them sort of separated out. I don't have an easy way to give a copy to the court. I anticipate Mr. Holmes testifying first, and so I can try to put that together for the court over the noon hour.
Okay.
Marked D-TR-372 will be the letter from Bob Holmes to James Holmes.
All right. So these are the letters from the defendant's father to the defendant. In terms of the letters from the defendant's mother to the defendant, those are the ones that you don't have available right now, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And then can you give me a heads up, Mr. Brockler, on what the other issue is?
Yes, Your Honor. It appears that the defense would like to introduce through the father some 100-plus documents, including pictures that appear to be cumulative in nature. For instance, there's a whole stack of exhibits that seem to be the pictures of the defendant's basketball team for every year he ever played basketball. Same thing with other sports. There appears to be certificates to the father about him having completed some coaching training program, which seem wholly irrelevant. There's to be certificates to the father about him having completed some coaching training program, which seem wholly irrelevant. There are numerous pictures of the defendant with the same family members in multiple and cumulative and redundant settings, Your Honor. And these are things that individually they may have some value other than dad's certificates for what he did, but there's a cumulative nature to these things. There's also, Your Honor, videos that we've been provided that I have some specific objections to, but I don't know if the court wants to address the photos first, however the court wants to do it.
Why don't you tell me what the objections are on the videos?
So there are some, looks like family videos that also would make many of those pictures cumulative. There's videos of the defendant appearing to play in the surf, and I think that may have actually been played during opening statement. There's some time that he spent, it looks like, with his grandmother. He's getting his hair cut, stuff like that. There are, however, what appear to be videos that the defendant's parents made to him since he's been incarcerated here, and that seems to also be irrelevant. Self-serving hearsay at best, certainly done in anticipation of litigation here in this case. There are 4 audio discs of messages that the defendant's father, I presume, will say that he left for the defendant during the months of April to June. Also hearsay and not relevant.
April to June of what year?
2012, sir.
Okay.
Voicemails checking in with him. Those two seem to be hearsay and irrelevant, Your Honor. And the discs are broken out a bit by topic, some not. But the cumulative nature of the pictures combined with the videos, at some point it makes all the additional photographs irrelevant. They don't highlight anything unique, and my respectful request would be that the defense identify those pictures and those videos that provide some unique view of whatever it is they're trying to tell the jury about the defendant to spare his life. The other stuff, Judge, I think is hearsay, and there can't be an appropriate foundation laid to expose the jury to these things that Mom and Dad have done in anticipation of this trial.
These are family videos that are in addition to the 17 that you talked about yesterday?
I thought they were all the same.
Okay, well, yesterday the people said they didn't have any objection to those family videos other than the 5 that were identified by Ms. Pearson, so.
That was my recollection also.
Well, Your Honor, some of these aren't, the 2 I'm talking about aren't family videos. I think they're videos of Mom and Dad that I think that they're undated.
But you mentioned some family videos related to, for example, the haircut video with the grandmother and something like that. So to the extent that they're family videos, you've stated that you don't have any objection. So, to the extent you have any objection to anything else, then I understand your objection. But with respect to the family videos, those are in by stipulation. So with the exception of the 5 where I overruled your objection. But do you have copies of the other videos so that I can take a look at them?
I believe that we do, Your Honor. And to make the record clear, I'm not asking the court to keep out those other family videos. I'm suggesting that their existence and their admission makes cumulative many of the other family photographs that they will intend to admit.
I understand now. Thank you. Why don't you hand those to my staff? We'll take a break, and then after the break, we'll proceed, okay? The court will be in recess for the lunch hour. Thank you.
Please rise.